Good morning. Thank you all for coming. Before we get going, certainly this is one of the worst kept secrets in recent Red Wing history. But I'm here today to announce the 27th head coach in team history and introduce Jeff Blashill.
Thanks, Ken. I'd like to start by thanking Mr. and Mrs. Illich, Chris and Kelly Illich, Ken Holland, Jim Devillano, and the Red Wing management team for this great opportunity. I realize this is one of the most coveted jobs in the National Hockey League, and I certainly feel fortunate to be sitting here today. I had a great experience in Grand Rapids for the last 3 seasons, and I just want to thank the ownership, management, and staff, Dan and Pam DeVos, David and Carol Van Andel, as well as many of the management in the group there. It was an unbelievable experience, and I can't thank them enough for our time while we were there. I'd like to thank a couple people who are responsible for me sitting here today, specifically 2 individuals that gave me my first head coaching jobs. Paul Scott, the owner of the Indiana Ice, believed in me after 10 years as an assistant in college. His friendship and mentorship still means a lot to me today. Kathy Beauregard, the athletic director at Western Michigan, gave me another opportunity after Paul to be a head coach, and probably more importantly, allowed me to leave and come to Detroit as an assistant, and I owe her a lot for that for certain. I certainly wouldn't be sitting here today if I hadn't received a phone call out of the blue in the spring, early summer of 2010 from Mike Babcock. I thank him for that opportunity. I thank him for not only that, but probably more importantly, the last 4 years of friendship and mentorship, and it certainly meant a lot to me, and again, a big reason why I'm sitting here today. I've had 2 direct bosses during my time in Grand Rapids, Jim Nill and Ryan Martin, and both have been provided great leadership for me, been great friends to me as well, and certainly thankful for them for that time as well. I think a special thanks to the Detroit Red Wing pro and amateur scouts. I can tell you firsthand, I've seen it firsthand as I've been through the American League and been through the National Hockey League. They've done a phenomenal job. They don't get enough credit, and I've certainly been one of the big beneficiaries of the work that they've done, and I want to publicly thank them. Coaches ultimately are a reflection of their players, and I've been real fortunate in my time to be able to coach great people and great players, and just represented by the captains of those teams I've coached, Brent Gwitt and Nick Balin with the Indiana Ice, Ian Slater at Western Michigan, and then for the last 3 years I've had a special group of guys with Jeff Hogan, Nathan Page, and Brendan Evans. And that group's been extremely responsible. They created a culture in Grand Rapids, a work ethic. They created a culture, a winning culture. They're a huge reason for the success that we had in Grand Rapids, and also a huge reason for the acceleration of the development of many of the young Red Wing prospects that are either on the team right now or are knocking on the door to be on the team, and they deserve great applause. I told Ken a year ago that with Mike's uncertainty, if Mike were to leave Detroit, that the Red Wing job was the job that I wanted most of any in the NHL. And I told him that there's certainly personal reasons for that. I was born in Detroit. My dad was a Detroit cop for 10 years. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie. I was a Red Wing fan, an avid Red Wing fan growing up. It's a great city that I believe in. It's a great organization, Original Six. But outside of the personal reasons, the more important reasons were the people that are involved in this organization. I mentioned the great ownership of the Illiches. Ken Holland as a general manager in the great management team that he's put together. I talked about the scouting staffs. But probably most importantly is the players. You can only win at the highest level. You can only win championships with great character and great talent. You can't have one or the other. You have to have both. And usually when you take a job, and I'm familiar with this, you're hoping that the group has great character. I don't have to hope at all. I know firsthand because I've experienced it. This group that we have here oozes character. They're led by three of the best winners, in my opinion, in all of sports, in Z, Pav, and Croner. They come every single day with an unbelievable work ethic. Their attention to detail every day. They're extremely competitive, and they're selfless, and they care about team success equal to that of their own success, many times more than their own success. I can't wait to go to work with this group in the fall and try to work to win a Stanley Cup. Just want to end by some personal thank yous to my family, starting with my father, Jim, and my mother, Rosemary, who are here today, as well as my siblings, Tim, Deb, and Lisa, my wife's parents, Ted and Kendra Williams, her siblings, Nick, Kyle, and Kirk. Our families means a lot to us. They're an extremely important part of our lives, and they've been extremely supportive through this journey, and I thank them. And then finally, to my own family, to my wife, Erica, to my sons, Teddy, Owen, and my daughter, Josie. It's not an easy thing to be a spouse or a kid of a coach. My oldest is 9 years old. This will be his sixth city he's lived in. But it's been a great journey together. We look forward to the next one here in Detroit. It's just been awesome, and I love you guys, and I thank you. And just before I hand it back off to Beamer, just to you, the media, I want you to know that my mom is extremely thankful for all the nice things you've been writing about me. I told her this morning, just wait. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll go ahead and open it to questions from the media. Just a reminder, if you do have a question for either Ken or Jeff, just raise your hand and wait for one of the two wireless mics. Matt, we'll start with you.
Jeff, Matt Shepard, WDFN, congratulations. How do you win the room if, as a young coach, do you feel like you need to win the room with some of the experienced players first?
Well, I think any coaching job I've gone into, Matt, whether I'm young or older, to me, it's you have to earn their respect. You give them, and you have to earn their respect, and they'll earn my respect as well. And that's really the approach I've taken for any job. I believe you earn it, and you earn it by your example every single day. So it's the same approach that I've taken in every coaching job I've had, whether I was a young assistant at Ferris State, moving through the ranks, whether I was an assistant here in Detroit or back in GR as the head coach there. You have to earn the respect of the players you coach and the people that you're around. And the only way to earn respect is through your daily actions.
Jeff, Helena St. James from the Detroit Free Press. Can you go back to a year ago when you knew other NHL teams were interested in you? And did Mike's decision not to sign an extension before the season play into your decision to stay with the organization? Just talk a little bit about what transpired there.
Well, two things I think at that time that were important. One is I loved my job in Grand Rapids. I loved the city of Grand Rapids, the people that were involved, the ownership, the staff. We had a great experience there. And I don't think when you're in a great situation, you're in any rush to go anywhere. And certainly at some point in my life, I wanted to be a head coach in the NHL, but I don't believe in rushing to get to those spots. And the second part of it is I'm good friends with Mike. I knew there was uncertainty around his particular position. And as I said in my talk, I told Ken that if there was one team in the NHL that I had the opportunity to coach, I'd want to coach the Detroit Red Wings. And so I felt like it was a great opportunity to stay in a job I loved. It was a great opportunity to continue to grow as a coach. And it was a great opportunity to put me in a position that if I did a great job, I'd be in a potential position to get the head coaching job here.
Jeff, Justin Rose, WXYZ here in Detroit.
Yeah.
With new head coaches come change. I know that you're familiar with the organization, but what are some of the changes that you want to make as you take over?
I can't speak particular to anything different from what I'll do to what's been done here. I don't ever like to talk about what's been done in the past. I'll have my own approach, and with my own approach, I'm sure will come change. I'm sure there's lots of similarities. I coach similar in a lot of ways to the way Babs had coached here, in a lot of the same approaches in terms of how we play. But I'm my own person. How I deal with players, how I deal with things on a daily basis. I'll be Jeff Blashill, and I think in that there'll be change.
Hey, Jeff. Tom Eschen from NBC in Flint. You mentioned your relationship with Coach Babcock over the conversations you had with him. What you learned about this job from him? Did he give you any advice, anything like that?
Well, I mean, I think having the opportunity to be here as an assistant, I learned lots through my time here. The biggest thing, I mean, honestly, and I told Ken this the other day, that the number one thing that I learned when I first got here, and this is just the truth, is I learned that if you ever had the opportunity to be a head coach in the NHL, the two things that are ultra important is that you have a great ownership group and you have a great general manager. And I know we have that here. And I say that because in the end, that probably is the most, those relationships and those people are the most important things towards success. I think people are the number one factor in success more than anything else. So, you know, obviously, having spent time here as an assistant, there's lots I learned about what it takes to win in the National Hockey League, maybe specifically to Detroit, but nothing that jumps out in one particular thing.
Jeff, you've coached many of the players that are already on the Red Wings and many more that are in Grand Rapids. Just talk about that familiarity with the system and the players and how that can help your transition here.
Well, I think, you know, we talked off the onset about building trust and earning trust, and I don't think trust is anything you should, respect and trust is anything that you should ever feel or take for granted. You have to earn it, and you earn it through your actions. And I think for a lot of the guys that are on this team, I've coached almost all of them at one point or other. Now, some of them was as an assistant here, and lots of them as a head coach. And I think there's been trust, respect on both sides already earned. So I think that helps us hit the ground running. I know lots about what makes a lot of the guys tick. Certainly you can't treat every guy the same. You have to, in each individual meeting, motivate people in different ways, and I think the fact that there is familiarity there will allow that to happen in a more efficient manner.
Jeff, Jamal Spencer, WZZM. You're the first American-born full-time head coach in franchise history, and being a Michigan native with a lifelong understanding of this tradition. What does that mean to you, and do you fully grasp the tradition and title of your new job?
I didn't know that, actually. That's an interesting fact. What took so long? Hey, Chelly? You know, I'm just kidding, obviously. There's a certain part of this today that, from a personal standpoint, is really neat. Again, I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie. I grew up an avid Red Wing fan. I remember going through I certainly didn't go through them like you guys did, but the hardships of trying to get to that first cup in a long time in '97 and then winning the back-to-back cups. I was a fan during that time. It's a neat thing to be able to ultimately be a head coach of an organization that was a big part of your life growing up. So that's a pretty cool thing. I think there's great American coaches out there, and I think that's represented in the National Hockey League. It's represented throughout hockey. I think it's represented in college hockey. I mean, one thing for me personally is I came up through the college hockey ranks, and I take great pride in that. And I know there's a lot of great college coaches out there coming up both through the USHL and college, and I take pride in the fact that I'm standing here today, and I know there's going to be lots of other guys that'll be in these same shoes at some point.
When you learned that Mike was going to leave, how did the conversations between you two unfold? Was it kind of automatically, okay, this is what we're doing, you've been our guy all along, or how did that unfold?
With Ken? Mm-hmm. Well, there was, I'm trying to think of the timeline. I mean, I think when Mike first let it be known that he was leaving, Ken just called me and alerted me to that and said we'd talk face-to-face, I think, the next week. And so that, you know, we were in the middle of a playoff series. My focus was certainly on us trying to win another Calder Cup, and I think we had a team that was good enough to do it, and we just fell a little bit short. But that was my sole immediate focus, I should say. But Ken and I had an opportunity to talk and went through it, and then just through those conversations got to this point today.
This is really for both of you guys. Jeff, how are you different than when you were coaching at Western? And Ken, how have you seen him grow in the last 3 years as a head coach?
There you go. How am I different? It's hard to say. It's hard to. The guys that have been around me probably would be able to answer that more than me, because I think when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to say that for sure. But there's no question that over the last 4 years, So the year as an assistant in Detroit in the last 3 years in Grand Rapids, there's no question that I've learned a ton. And you learn by doing, you learn by going through stuff. I think I just am somebody who wants to get better at my craft. I want to get better as a coach, and so you adapt. I don't know for sure exactly which things. I know during my time here, you know, one of Mike's real strengths obviously is attention to detail, the speed at which he practices. I learned those things during my time here, and I think applied them in Grand Rapids. The meetings, the conciseness of the meetings, but there's lots of X's and O's stuff as well that I think have allowed me to grow.
Well, Matt, I would just say that you know, in watching Jeff, obviously I got, you know, 4 years ago, Mike Babcock came to me, you know, when we had an opening as an assistant coach. I've always given Mike the authority to find someone that he thought was going to be the right fit for his organization. I'm not sure how Mike Babcock found Blash, but one day he said, I'm going to meet Blash. I think we met in Minnesota, didn't we?
Yeah.
In Minnesota we met, and I was impressed the first time I sat down with Jeff, and then we hired Blash to be an assistant. And, you know, I think people that have watched my time as general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, I'm big on development. And I think that, you know, player development, people development, I just respect that the National Hockey League is the hardest league in the world because the other 29 teams are, they're grinding away just like we're grinding away. And the more prepared that you can be at the NHL level, the better chance that you have for success. So, you know, when Blash came in, he spent a year as an assistant coach in Detroit. As fate would have it, I guess the next year, Kurt Fraser, who was the head coach in Grand Rapids, got a job to be an assistant coach in Dallas. And Blash was my first call. We had two assistants, Bill Peters and Blash. Bill Peters had just come from the American League, so I knew Bill wasn't going to go back. I called Blash and I said, "There's an opening in Grand Rapids. Do you want the job? You're the first, my first call." Blash said, "Give me 24 hours." He called me back the next day and said, "Ken, I'd like to take you up on the opportunity to run Grand Rapids." So, you know, just spending, and then he went down and you know, certainly Blash won a championship in Indianapolis in the USHL. He won. You know, he goes to Grand Rapids. He wins Calder Cup. We have a tournament there called the Prospect Tournament. I think the first time we ever won we've won one championship in 18 years. Blash was at the helm. Then you watch the players that come up here, how prepared they are for the next level. Their attention to detail, and certainly as I talk to players that come up, the respect that they have for how Jeff makes them accountable, but at the same time has an ability to have a relationship with them that they understand what's expected, but at the same time he's in their corner. So, you know, when a year ago, when I went to Blash, the year was over, I said, "Blash, 5 teams have called, asked to interview for NHL head coaches. There's 2 ways we can go. One is I'll let you interview, and you can, if you don't get a job, you can come back. 2, we can renegotiate your contract. We negotiate a salary increase." We certainly talked about the uncertainty of Mike Babcock's situation, and I told Blash that if we weren't able to retain Babs, that he would be my #1 candidate. And again, 24 hours later, Blash called me back and said, "Ken, I love it here." And just like he had said, he wanted to stay in Grand Rapids and continue to develop as a coach for 1 more year. So when you start to piece everything together, it eventually comes to the decision that we made today. I just think that it's a perfect time for Blash to take over our team, and we've had a fabulous run with Mike Babcock for 10 years, and I'm hoping that the decision we made today is going to be a decision that's going to run here for a lot of years.
Jeff, what is your goal immediately this coming year for the Red Wings? How far is the team along, and what do you expect from the first version of your coach team?
Well, I think we're probably like 25 other teams that your goal is certainly to win a Stanley Cup. That's what your goal is when you start the year. Now, to get there, and this I think gets confused a little bit when one thing this team's done is with the playoff streak has been unbelievable, but I think what gets confused is it's not about the streak per se. It's about you have to get into the playoffs in order to ultimately compete to win a Stanley Cup. So every team I've coached, we've basically had 2 goals. One was to win the championship at the end of the year, and one was to help our players become the very best players and have the very best years they could. That's a promise that I give to them that I think is extremely important, and that's no different here. But we never talk about that goal after that day. We talk about on the process that it's going to take to reach it, which is ultimately your day-to-day approach. We divide the year into segments, and we try to play like a playoff team every single segment, which ultimately gives you the opportunity to earn a position in the playoffs, which ultimately gives you an opportunity to compete for a Stanley Cup. So that's the approach I've taken everywhere I've been, and that's the same approach we'll take here.
Jeff, Keith Gave with Fox Sports Detroit right here.
Yep. Hi, Keith.
How you doing? You mentioned the streak a second ago. This team has been in the playoffs 24 straight years, 25 coming up next spring. Any incumbent pressure on you looking forward to not ending that streak?
Well, the pressure for me, it's a year-to-year thing. Like, I think the pressure that you put on yourselves as an organization, as a coach, as a manager, as players, is bigger than any outside pressure that you could face. So any external pressure is not nearly as big as the internal pressure you put yourself under to try to do the very best you can. So with that said, though, we don't worry about what could happen if you don't do it. We try to focus on what's it going to take to do it. That's our focus. And I said that lots. I said that when we were down 2-0 against Toronto this year, and people talked about the pressure of Game 3, and if you lose, you're done. And I said, we all understand that. We're not hiding behind it, but our focus isn't on what might happen if we lose. Our focus is on what's it going to take to win, and that's the approach that we take.
Art Regner from WDET. This is actually two questions, one for Ken and then one for Jeff. Ken, I am under the assumption, is this a 3-year deal for Jeff? 4-year deal? And Jeff, you talked about coming up in the college ranks. Do you think that's why you have the uncanny ability to coach young players, is because in college, you're more on the ice during practice. You only play twice a week as opposed to maybe the CHL where 3-4 games, in a week's period.
I think two things I'd say. One, I think coaching is coaching, whether you're coaching young players or coaching veterans. Certainly, we had Jeff Hogan, I think, was 37 years old this year in Grand Rapids. We had 20-year-olds in Grand Rapids. We take a lot of the same approach in terms of our daily approach with each group. Now, you handle them a little bit differently. But I think coaching is coaching. I think I've had a great ability to be in experiences that have helped me grow. And, the different experience, I was a college assistant for 10 years, so a lot of that time I spent recruiting and scouting and watching players. I think a big part of a coach's job is figuring out who the best players are on your team. And some guys are real good at it and some aren't, and I think that's a real important part. I think I spent 2 years as a head coach in the USHL. There's unique challenges there. I spent a year in college. So all those things I think have helped shape who I am, and hopefully I've grown through all those experiences, and I plan to continue to grow.
Hey, Jeff Rieger, 97 won the ticket. Congratulations. And obviously, this city is obsessed with their goaltenders. I just wondered, not that you know everything about the team just yet, but you know your candidates. I just wondered, moving forward, when you look at the job ahead of you, how big of an issue is the goaltending situation? And I guess, what do you see out of the two guys that might make a run for it?
Well, the one thing that I know is that both Jimmy Howard and Peter Mrazek have proved at different points in their careers that they're elite goalies. And I think it's great to have as much depth at every position as you can. And that's what those guys have proven at different points in their career. And I know they're both elite competitors as well and character people. So I'm excited to have a chance to coach both of them.
Jeff, Ken Cal, Detroit Red Wings Radio. Congratulations. Welcome. Have you decided on your assistant coaches? And if not, do you have a time frame to tell us?
We're still in the process of I guess going through the process of getting the right guys and putting the staff together. And I'd say a time frame, Ken, probably a week. Within the week, we'd like to have it settled and put the best staff we can together and then get to work.
Anything else for Ken or Jeff? Okay, at this time, I'd like all the still photographers to make their way forward. We're going to have a quick photo op with Jeff and Ken.